Hello, it looks like one person has joined. Oh, two people have joined. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully as well you can see that there's a text chat. I'll get people using the text chat for now. The button to open the chat window, and if it's not open already, is at the bottom of the screen. It looks like a speech bubble. If I could get you to say hello and just confirm what your first name is, KOK. I think I know who Mia is. And when we've got a few more people in, I'll give some more information about how this whole thing works. Hello, Alex. Oh, of course, KOK is Alex. Hello, Amelia. And Shania, I was just saying if you could open the chat window, if it's not open already, there's an icon at the bottom of the screen. If you can click on that and just say hello. And I'll also just ask, can you see me clearly and hear me clearly? I should turn on my video, that would probably help. Okay, you can see me, excellent. Wait, hang on, says Shania. Oh, okay, Shania I think had to leave, but Nicola is coming in. And Alin's in. So just missing one. One person hasn't been at all, and Shania's been in and out. If you can hear and see me, would you please open the chat window by pressing the little speech bubble icon at the bottom of the screen and just say hello. Same for you, Alin. Hello, says Alin. Hello, senpai. Not sensei? Why would it be different for me, sensei? Why would it be different for you, Alin? I don't know. I think I'd given the instruction saying Nick, and then I was saying, oh, and Alin, you too, if you do the same thing. I don't think I knew Alin had a bird. I know Alin has dogs. Looks like Shania's back in. So unfortunately, we don't have Mariam. We'll give her a minute or two and then we'll start. Okay, audio is not working for Shania, but I take it it's working for everyone else. You guys are silly. If you can't hear me, I can tell you that you are silly. I won't. Oh, Mariam's in. Excellent. Mariam, I've just asked everyone I'm going to mute people's videos just for now. So I won't get people to turn on videos just yet. Oh, Shania can hear now. Excellent. Mariam, there's a little speech bubble icon down at the bottom of the screen. And if you click on that, you should be able to see a chat window and you can just type in hello. Now, I'm going to mute everyone. So Mariam, if you could please click the speech bubble icon at the bottom of the screen and then just say hello in the chat so I know you've got that ability, that would be really helpful. There we go. So I think I've muted everyone and made it so you can't unmute yourselves. I'll go over some ground rules and then we'll take it from there. I'm still not not seeing a message from Mariam. I hope she can see and hear me and take it in. But I will start the lesson now, I think. Thanks so much for joining in at 9 a.m. on what could have been kind of like a holiday, even though it's technically still school time for you. As I mentioned in our last lesson back on Monday, I am hoping that we'll be able to deliver lessons this way quite a bit, but there are some sort of concerns, procedural concerns about how we manage video chats between teachers and students. So I sent you that email, which obviously you all received because you're here now, but I'll just quickly go over those 5 ground rules again before I... Hello, Mariam. I see your message now. That's great. So I'll quickly go through those 5 ground rules again that I think we'll keep workshopping them, but I think they'll form the basis of how we do video chats at Northside. So one of the main things is to bear in mind that you have an adult, a teacher, who's seeing into presumably your home, and so you need to be really thoughtful about that. You need to be thoughtful about other students as well. So that means in terms of what we're all wearing, I think I said neat casual. So, modest clothing and appropriate clothing. It doesn't need to be professional wear. You don't need a collar and a tie and things, but you do need to be thoughtful about being dressed appropriately for interacting with a teacher and other students. Similarly, the background, you can see I've got a very, very boring background. If you had, death metal posters or something, or other things in the background that could be offensive or distracting, then that would be not okay. And on that front as well, if you can try to be in a location that is semi-public, so I suggested like your dining room table, if that's quiet enough, that would be a good location. It wouldn't be appropriate to be alone in your bedroom with the door shut while you've got a teacher talking to you. So we just need to be really careful and thoughtful for each other's sakes about that, and just making sure that we maintain a high standard, because when everyone maintains the high standard, it stops anything bad ever happening. To help with that, I am recording this session, so please bear in mind that that this video will be available to our class, and so your image, if we enable video, and your voice will be recorded, and that means we can review this material down the track, but it also means if there are any questions about was everything appropriate, we have video evidence, we have the full recording, and we can go back and say, that's not how that should have been, or no, that's fine, that was a misunderstanding. If anyone does do anything inappropriate, then I will need to kick them out of the chat. I will need to remove them from this video conference, and they wouldn't be able to come back in the same session until we'd had a conversation and addressed whatever went wrong. So I won't name names, but for one particular male student in the class, your somewhat controversial jokes wouldn't be appropriate in this. Yes, says one male student. We've got to just be extra thoughtful and extra considerate in this format, where there's thanks for all the comments, where it's we just need some more strict guidelines about how we speak face to face. There's a bit more context and a bit more transparency, whereas in this forum we need to be just a bit more cautious. Okay, so that's all the ground rules. So with that in mind, I will generally leave your video and thanks, Mia. I will leave your video and microphones off, but I'm going to make it so that you can unmute, so that you can turn on your video and microphone at any point that you want. And I encourage you to interrupt me. If you feel that I'm talking and I'm in a flow, don't worry about it. Just interrupt if you have a question. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Olin. Thank you for that. Yeah, down the bottom, you do have reactions. Now, I believe you've got 2 reactions, which are clap and thumbs up. Can anyone confirm? Yep, I'm seeing thumbs up and claps. Can you see something down the bottom that lets you raise your hand? Because when I looked at an online tutorial, it said that you can raise your hand, but I can't see, that. So I'm not sure if that's because I'm the boss or if or what's going on there. Can someone tell me if they can or can't see? Raise your hand. Why don't we try it? Why doesn't someone unmute their video and microphone, someone brave, and say whether they can or can't see it? Who's going to be the first one to unmute their video and microphone and say, based on the text comments, no, I can't see it? Who's brave? Oh, no one yet. All right. Alex votes Amelia. All right, I won't force it at this point. That's okay. All right. Yeah, so I don't know what that's about. Maybe it was in an older version of Zoom that we're using, but that's okay. All right, yes, you could clap if you want to raise your hand. That's a great idea, Lynn. Thank you. And if you do that, and of course you can use the text comments, and I will be referring to that regularly. But if I get caught up in the sound of my own voice, then you might need to just unmute and interrupt, and I encourage you to do that. Imagine you interrupted me in class or clapped to say, I want something. I think Alex does that. Sorry, Nick does do that. All right, so I do want this to be two-way if it can be, so please do try to communicate back with me. But let's get into it. Now, I'm using the free version of Zoom, which means, sorry about that, Alex. You're just very similar people, you know, you look alike, and yeah, no. Okay, so I'm using the free version of Zoom, which says that it cuts out after 40 minutes. I've used it 2 or 3 times now, and it's always let me record past the 40 minutes. I'm not sure if that's a special Corona deal that a lot of technology companies are doing, or if it's just something else. So let's try to cap this at 40 minutes, which gives us less than 30 minutes. So this is a bit of a trial. There's a few things I want to go through. There's other ways I can communicate through Schoology and things, but let's see how this goes. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen, and I'd be really curious to know when I share my screen whether you can still see my face, or if it's only, I guess you should still be able to see my face up the top depending how you've got it set up. But I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see both my, sorry, I'm distracted trying to work out which option I want. You should be able to see, hopefully, the video of my face as well as the lesson. Which one are we up to? We'll go through this lesson first. I don't have the text chat. Why don't I have the text chat? Oh, I remember I had to do this the other day. Give me one sec. I click chat there. That brings up the chat. And then I change that to everyone. And I'll put that over the right-hand side. So can I, in the chat, get someone to confirm for me, what can you see? You can see my face, but it's up the top where your name box is. Okay, that's fine. So you can see my head and my screen. Excellent. And Shania, yep, cool. Great. All right, that all sounds good. Now, unfortunately, I might not be able to see everyone's video thing now that I'm doing screen sharing. Yeah, okay, so, oh, that'll work well enough. Cool. I'll put it down to there. All right, so I will, in a class of 6, I can see everyone's little box on the right. So I can see your name. So if you do the clap thing, I should notice it. But I think let's try to use the, sorry, that's what I'm going to do actually. So I can't see your videos right now. So if you want to make a comment, just put it in the comments box, you know, the group chat, and I'll make sure I check that regularly. And I think that will work for video as well. All right, let's get into it because we need to, ooh, I clicked the wrong button. We need to run this class. So there are a few questions that came up on the forum. Most people had questions about question 7 from short answers. So I'll make sure we go through that one. There are also some questions about punishment and reinforcement. So perhaps we'll start talking about punishment and reinforcement, and then we'll go on to question 7. There's another few things that I want to point out as well, a couple of questions that I found challenging that people didn't mention, but I just want to go back and review. Okay, so I will go to the actual textbook. Sorry, my screen's a bit messy, so I'm going to move that over there and try and make this work. So thanks for bearing with me. As I said, I'm sure I'll get much better at this as time goes on. Okay. No, that didn't work. That's better. I don't think you guys can see what I'm doing, but in the video, it'll all make sense. Okay, so let's get into it. So first of all, let's talk about reinforcement and punishment. I think that came up in, was it question 6? Oh no, I don't actually know. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's a question about reinforcement and punishment that I can just use as an example. So explain whether the scenario is an example of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, or punishment. I'm not going to talk specifically about this example, but just to clarify that difference between reinforcement and punishment. So the thing that I think we really need to remember is that punishments are always bad, and hopefully that makes it sort of easy to remember, right? Because that makes sense that punishments are always bad. We know that. We know that punishments aren't good. So punishments are always undesirable. Oh, that's bad handwriting. I will get better at this, I promise. So punishments are always undesirable. Whereas what does reinforcement do? If you think of like a brick wall that's starting to crumble and starting to fall down, when you put reinforcement in it, you might add some sort of metal struts or something to help hold it up. You're adding reinforcement to hold up that brick wall, to keep it going so that it can stand, so it can continue. And so that's the idea of reinforcement. They actually reinforce, they help keep the behavior continuing. So that's like support. That's right. It supports the behavior. Thanks for that, for adding that idea, Alex. So when you add reinforcement, you're adding some kind of support to the brick wall, or in the case of operant conditioning, you're supporting, you're reinforcing, you're holding up that behavior so that it can continue. So when you do your homework and I give you a chocolate, that's a reinforcement, that's a support to encourage that behavior and to help that behavior to continue. So that's the idea there of reinforcement. As I said, punishment, we all know that's a bad thing. We don't want to get punished, so any punishment is going to make us less likely to repeat the behavior. But both positive and negative reinforcement will make us more likely to repeat the behavior, because whether we're adding something with positive reinforcement or taking something away with negative reinforcement, in both cases, we like it. It's a good thing. It's a desirable outcome. And so we're more likely to repeat the behavior. Are there any questions now? Please put them in the chat, or you can unmute and talk so that we can, I want to get a bit of feedback about whether that worked for you. In the chat or by unmuting. The question is, did that make sense? Cool. All right, I'm getting lots of yeses, and I was even told it was a very God explanation. I'm not sure it was that good an explanation, but hopefully it was a good explanation, if not godly. All right, thank you very much. Yes, I do teach psychology. Cool. So let's go now to question 7, because this was the one that most students seem to have trouble with. Oh, it's really awkward. I've got again, I'm not sure exactly what you're seeing, but for the video, I've got my face and I've got the chat window, and both of them are covering the book that I'm trying to show. I guess I could make the book not full screen. That's what I'll do. So again, bear with me for just another moment. There we go. Okay, so this question, several students said they were having trouble with. So research studies have found that adolescents are more likely to begin smoking cigarettes if their parents, siblings, and friends smoke. Explain this finding in terms of the observational learning model. So several students said they were struggling with this question, that the observational learning model was perhaps something they were finding difficult. So let's just quickly go through how we'd assess this one. So first of all, it's a 5-mark question. So we know there's going to be 5 marks worth of answer. Now it says explain this finding in terms of the observational learning model. So I'm thinking, well, we've got to explain what the observational learning model is, and we've got to apply it to this scenario. So first of all, I'm going to try to have neat handwriting. So first we need to define or explain observational learning. And of course, you've used your cue cards and you've been reviewing the textbook and you've memorized a really good definition of observational learning. And you've always got to remember to link it to the scenario. So you'd be saying something about social learning theory, the idea that the context we're in, what we observe in people around us, changes the way we behave, that we learn and copy models that we see in our environment. And so these adolescents who've seen their parents smoking, people around them smoking, that provides a context and several models of that behavior, making them more likely to replicate that behavior. Now that's for our first mark. So then we've still got 4 other marks. So who can tell us, preferably through audio, who could answer the question, what are the, I sometimes call it 5, I sometimes call it 4, but since we've got 4 marks, let's call it 4, the 4 elements of observational learning. Who can tell us from memory? I'm hoping someone's brave enough to unmute their microphone and answer the question. Perhaps I'll call on someone. I'm going to ask
attention, retention.
Alex, can you remember the 4 elements of observational learning?
Well, I can. Can you hear me?
We have radio silence from Alex. Nick can't.
Oh, can everyone hear me except Mr. Gat?
Oh, okay. Now I'm not hearing anyone. Why is that? Let me just test my. Yeah, my speakers are working. Yeah, no, I haven't heard you guys speak a single time this whole session. So if perhaps I'm missing something. What I'll do, I'll just stop sharing for a moment and I'll just test my.
I ain't doing the video.
Sound.
I like just work.
Sorry, bear with me for just a moment. Be interesting to see whether the
Aline, show him your hair.
it'll be interesting to see whether
No,
the
Alex, no.
Oh, now I can hear everyone.
Oh, shucks.
All right. I'm very sorry. So how much have you guys been talking? And I've been sitting there like an idiot thinking.
Alex is flirting with me. She was flirting with me and you didn't hear it.
All right, just remembering all the rules I said at the start about being a bit extra careful with the jokes we make and things like that in this forum. All right, so Alex, can you tell us what are the 4 elements? Good job, Nick. What are the 4 elements of observational learning?
There's attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation reinforcement.
Very, very good. Well done. All right, so I'll just go back to the other screen. Oh, I've lost the chat again. I'll get better, don't worry. So I can't see the text chat now, but we'll keep going for now. So you said there is, can you say it again for us, Alex?
Attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation reinforcement.
Attention, retention, reproduction.
And motivation reinforcement.
Yeah, and how do we remember them? Anyone remember the silly mnemonic I made up?
Armor.
Armor. Oh, now I'm feeling, hang on, is there an E there in reinforcement? Oh dear. Is there not? How embarrassing.
No, there is.
No, there is a.
There is an
That's
E.
right.
I just confirmed. Good. All right. So, yes, I like to remember that with armor, like the word armor, but said like a pirate. Armor. So we would then have to go through and for these 4 stages, link them to the scenario. So we'd have to say that first of all, there's parents, siblings, friends all around the person. They're likely to have observed that, to have paid attention to it. Retention. This is very sort of straightforward. It wouldn't be hard to retain it in memory. They're regularly exposed to it, so it wouldn't be hard to retain in memory. They would have to have, yes.
When we're relating it to the scenario, should we also explain what happens in that section of the model? Should we give a definition for like what happens and then relate it to the scenario?
That's probably good practice. Yeah, you could potentially explain each one in terms of the scenario in a way that shows that you fully understand it. But as a good habit or pattern to get into, it could be good to say, attention, the learner has to pay attention to the model, as there are many people around them, including role models and peers. They're likely to pay attention to this behavior. So yeah, so you could do that 1-2 step every time. Define it, link it to the scenario.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do you guys get the idea? Do you have any other specific questions at this point? Again, I don't have the chat visible, so I'll need you to use the microphone to talk. Tell me yes or no if you get it.
I get it.
All good.
All right,
Yes.
and we'll keep going. Now I had, I need to be conscious of time. We've been going 28 minutes. Okay, we'll see how we go. All right, there's a couple of other questions that I have. So I'm going to very quickly call on individuals to answer some of these questions that my students in the past have struggled with. So I'll get you guys to just call out the answers. Nick, what did you say for question 1? Which of the following is the simplest form of learning? What do you reckon, Nick?
Observational learning.
Observational learning. What makes you say observational learning?
It only involves the person observing something to learn it, whereas classical or operant conditioning involves like more of a busier process in a way.
Okay, yep, I understand the logic there. However, if you think about observational learning, in some ways it's more complicated. You've got to have a model going through certain behaviors and receiving consequences, same as operant conditioning. And then you have to have an individual observing that and paying attention to it and retaining it and having the possibility of reproducing that behavior. So it's actually got more steps and it's more removed from the initial behavior. So for that reason, and I'm not sure what the answer guide says. Actually, I've got the answers right here. Yeah, so for that reason, C is the correct answer, because classical conditioning, we start classical conditioning. We use classical conditioning to train animals. We use classical conditioning from the time we're newborns. We start forming associations, and it's that really simple, 2 things happen at once. I form an association between them, and that influences my future behavior. So it's actually classical conditioning that's the most straightforward, the simplest form of learning. Again, we sort of looked at it in terms of the aplasia and things like that. That was probably, what was that, operant conditioning? I think I would call that classical conditioning. All right, I've just got a warning saying there's 10 minutes left, so let's keep going quickly. And once again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to unmute your microphone and jump straight in to ask questions. So I'm just thinking, with that amount of time, whether there's anything else, how I should prioritize other things. Question 20. Let's just skip straight over to question 20 here. Who haven't I asked yet? Alin. An operant is any behavior that does one of these 4 things. What did you say for question 20, Alin?
I said C.
You said C.
Oh, wait, I said A.
All right. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, so you said A. When I did this question myself, my first thought was A, and I did sort of say A, and then went, oh, maybe I didn't feel really confident about it. Because when we think about operant conditioning, we think about behaviors that are responding to a trigger in the environment where we've got an antecedent and we respond to it. However, while that is true of operant conditioning, this idea of operant comes from the word operate. So if we focus on that as the definition, to operate on the environment, then we start to think that perhaps one of the other answers works better. Which one best reflects that idea that I'm operating, I'll just give the answer, I'm making changes to the environment? D is actually suits that definition, that specific idea about operant behaviors being behaviors where we interact with and affect the environment around us. In the current study design, they've removed some of the history of it, but it started with this idea of instrumental learning, where they'd do things like they'd put rats in a cage, and there was a button that would give a treat. And as the rat walks around and sort of touches different things and brushes against different things, eventually it accidentally presses that button and gets a treat, gets a reward. And then it starts going, oh, when I operate on this, when I affect the environment, when I touch that button, something happens and I get a consequence. And that consequence could either be reinforcement or punishment. And depending on that, I'll either repeat that behavior or won't. And so that's why D, the affecting the environment, operating on the environment, is the best answer to that one.
So, sir, does that fall back on the difference between operant and classical conditioning being the person is either passive or not passive?
Absolutely. That's core to it. And I know you guys have submitted one of the online lessons was to compare classical and operant conditioning, and I will give feedback on that. I tried to last night, but we'd had the secondary remote learning day and I'd been on the go for hours. I'm like, I can't think. So I will give feedback through Schoology on that. You do need to be able to compare classical and operant conditioning. But you're absolutely correct. In classical conditioning, the learner is passive, right? Pavlov's dog just had to sit there. It heard things. It had an involuntary response. It was salivating. Whereas in operant conditioning, the rat I was just describing is active. It actually needs to move around in the environment, affect the environment. It needs to operate on the environment. And that's what makes the learner active. Great point, Nick. Thank you for that. Okay, we have... That's right. We'll leave that there at this point. Please always remember to mark yourself. You've got the answer guide, and in the back of your textbook, you've got the multiple choice answers. So it's really essential that you mark yourself. You need to be active learners and be very deliberate and diligent in doing that. I did just remember question 5 in the answer guide, there was a mistake. I've since corrected it. Thank you, Amelia for pointing it out. And you can see in the discussion what the mistake was. If you haven't looked at it already, I've updated it now, and so it should be correct. But it was incorrectly saying that the loud noise was the conditioned stimulus leading to the unconditioned response, which of course doesn't make any sense. The loud noise was the unconditioned stimulus, which leads to the unconditioned response. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. So as I keep saying, this is more of a test, hopefully a valuable test. Hopefully this is a useful lesson. But if we don't get through everything, that's okay, because I did set it up to work online. But with our last 5 minutes, I want to just quickly turn our attention to the practical investigation. I introduced this very briefly in our last lesson back on Monday. But I just wanted to go through a few extra things in the next 3.5 minutes. So the practical investigation is going to be a SAC. It will be at the end of the term, term 2, around GAT week, which is week 8 of term 2. Of course, this is all subject to change depending on how things play out, but we'll be working on it throughout this term. The criteria are here. Oh, I can't zoom out far enough. So quite a few criteria on this, so make sure you review that as always. But essentially what we need to do is we need to run a practical investigation, something like an experiment. You will plan it, you will run it, we'll analyze the data, and then you'll present all your findings in a scientific poster. In order to do that, you need to fill in the practical investigation logbook. So on the holidays, I'm getting you to go through a few steps that I'll go through with you in a sec. When you click this, it will prompt you to make your own copy. You need to name the copy with your surname, Practical Investigation Logbook 2020. Not sure if it says 2020 in the file name. You might need to add that. So please make sure it follows that format. And then make sure you share the file with me so that I can access it. I would suggest as soon as this meeting's over, why not do those first few steps, open, rename, and share. And then steps 4, 5, 6, you might need a bit more time to work on them. This is the practical investigation logbook, which I will rename to add the word 2020 at the end. And it's designed that you'll work through this over the next about 10 weeks. And it starts from the very beginning and goes right through to producing your scientific poster. Please try and read through it carefully. The first thing you need to do is put your name right here. And also you'll rename it to get rid of the word NCC and put in your surname. But you can see here it's designed with 8 steps as well as some additional information at the start. When you click on these things, you can jump straight to your straight to the part of the logbook. So I got distracted because I think the chat is happening. If I get the chat up now, what can I see? Why is it unit 4? Oh, excellent question. Alex does not miss logbooks. Yeah, but Alex, you've never got to do my logbook. It's the best of logbooks. Yes, this is pretty much the same one that we used last year. In fact, it's almost identical. It is unit 4, so the practical investigation is technically the last topic in unit 4. It's unit 4, area of study 3. You can see it in your course outline, more details. However, the logbook can be done, the practical investigation can be done at any point in the year. And since unit 4, semester 2 of year 12 is really short, almost everyone does the practical investigation in term 2. I think it's best practice. I can see in the chat you're saying don't say best in logbook, but I think it's the best practice for the practical investigation. And so that is what we'll do as well. All right, I have about 20 seconds. You will work through it. The task, it's all outlined here. You'll read through all of this information. Lots of great advice for you. And on the holidays, you need to brainstorm potential ideas. See if you can come up with at least 10 ideas. They could be research questions and things like that. I'm confused by Alex's question, and we are over time. It's still recording, I think. If this SAC is occurring at the end of next year, this SAC is occurring at the end of next term. We will be learning content at the same time. Yes, sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, so we're going to be working on memory for most of the rest of term 2. We'll do the learning sack and then move on to memory. And we'll be doing this sort of in bits and pieces throughout. If you look at the course outline, the weekly